It's not just weight. Welcome back to the Rants. It's your boy LaTrump. Today we're going to talk about my kind of thoughts and experiences with Aluula or any of these kind of lightweight, stiffer materials like Ultra-X. I know there's some other ones out there. Airush has some too. In general, I think there's a lot of hype about these materials. What I see being pushed is mainly it's lighter, so it must be better kind of philosophy. And whilst I agree that being lighter in some instances is a big advantage, foiling with smaller kites, riding lighter winds, I don't think the weight is the only thing you should be considering. And I also think that in a lot of cases, it's not making a better kite to ride. I think a lot of these kites, to my tastes, are worse to ride. They have worse bar feel, and the way they handle just doesn't feel better to me than a regular Dacron kite. So I'd kind of like to go into that a bit today. The general trend in the water sports industry, the kiteboarding industry, is really to move to, the next thing. What can we sell people next on that they don't already have? What can we upsell them to? Brands always need some reason to sell you something, and I think Aluula and these lighter weight fabrics are the perfect excuse to tell you that you need a new product, because they have some statistics to go off, and everyone loves statistics, right? 30% lighter kite, oh, you're going to jump 30% higher. They love kind of putting these things out there, and whilst I don't think that all of them are necessarily wrong or false, some of these statements are, semi-accurate at least, but I do think that not everyone needs this latest or greatest thing, and in some cases these newer products or these newer materials might actually have fairly big disadvantages in certain areas, because they have to get there somehow, right? You can't get something for nothing. There's no magic material that is just lighter without sacrificing something else. So what is the sacrifice? And that's really what I want to get into with this rant, is talking about what I think the drawbacks of these newer material types are, the Aluulas, the Ultra-X kites, and anything similar that's lightweight. They all generally are a lot stiffer. And from my tastes and point of view, I don't like stiff kites. I actually don't think they feel good. I think, funnily enough, they feel like what a sea kite feels to a regular SLE kind of design. And this is always what people really hated about sea kites, was having too much bar pressure. But that is what having a stiff Aluula or Ultra-X kite feels like to me. The bar pressure is much stiffer. It's much harder to initiate a turn. Yeah, it turns quicker once it's turning, but to get there, you still need to put more bar pressure in. And I notice when I'm riding these type of kites that my elbows and wrists and stuff kind of just get sore riding it. I don't like that feeling, especially not for wave or for foiling use. I much prefer a regular Dacron kite that has flex. It's softer to ride on the bar, and I think that softer feel and the ability to bend and twist and deform actually lets you have more control over where you position the kite, because you can deform and stretch the kite while sheeting in, which lets it fly backwards and fly downwind easier. I've talked to a fair few people about this now, and I think opinions are really split. There's the people that swear by the Aluula or the Ultra-X kites, thinking that they get far more out of it. It's far better. It's far easier to ride. It feels really light. The bar feel is light. And then there's the other end of the people that have purchased Aluula or similar kites, and they just didn't feel the hype behind it. And I think I'm of that variety. I do see a big advantage for light wind use. I think from sizes 11 and up, I think these lightweight materials make a lot of sense, just because you're getting a lot better performance in lighter winds. But I still don't like the feel of them, even in that regard. I just think that in those lighter winds, the added performance outweighs the amount that I don't like the feeling of these bigger Aluula kites. It's a bit of a trade-off. I think you've got to choose when you use this equipment and what you use it for. If you're looking for a bigger light wind style kite, I think it does make a lot of sense. I think you are going to gain performance out of it. Whether it's enough to outweigh the added cost of Aluula is another thing entirely, but for sure there's a performance advantage there, and it does make some sense. When you're thinking about smaller kites, I'm not so sure. For wave riders, not so sure. Don't think it makes a huge amount of sense. I think for waves, it's much nicer to have a kite that is softer and has some flex, and kind of the feedback's more spongy at the bar. I don't think that super hard stiff feeling is nice in waves, but that's just my opinion. I also don't think for foil that super kind of stiff, rigid feeling is nice, where the kite can't flex and twist. And I think the real part that's holding it back is actually the twisting action. I think the stiffness stopping it from twisting is the part that is really making it feel stiff, or the bit that I don't like about it as much. And it makes sense because I've also tried some prototypes of sea kites with Aluula, and you really notice it there, because a sea kite really does need to twist and deform in order to turn. It can't turn without twisting and deforming the kite, because it's not really flying or pivoting off the bridles, it's flying off those wingtip attachment points. And in that case, you really feel it. Like a sea kite with Aluula just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good at the bar. Sure, it flies cool because it's a bit lighter weight in a bigger size, but the overall feeling of how it flies, to me at least, just wasn't enjoyable. It's a lot of work. It doesn't feel nice. And that is the same kind of feeling I get when I compare a normal Dacron kite to Aluula or Ultra-X in those smaller sizes for wave. So yeah, I didn't want to make this one too long. I didn't want to tell you even what to buy. I just wanted to share my experiences, tell you that you can't get something for nothing, right? You're always going to trade something off. You've got 30% less weight, but maybe that comes with added stiffness or reduced durability or anything else. You know, you really got to think about it. And if I were to compare it to some other things, you know, maybe surfboards. Sometimes you have a super light surfboard. It doesn't make it nicer to ride. You know, you could get a surfboard that weighs 1 kilo, but you would feel every single bump, and it would start blowing away in the wind. It wouldn't have the momentum that you carry on a little bit heavier board. And I think that is similar in kites. You start to feel every single lull and gust in the wind. It starts to feel kind of more shaky and more vibraty. And the longer you try and ride a kite like this, the more you start to feel that, especially when you go back to a regular Dacron kite that kind of flexes a bit more. If I were to compare it to something else like cameras, I guess you could say it's a bit like the chase for resolution, right? Is the same as the chase for lightweight kites. Camera brands keep adding more and more resolution every year. 4K, 6K, 8K, 12K, 16K. But we know that not all Ks are the same, right? Just because it's 8K doesn't mean it has better image quality than a 4K camera. And I think that's the same for kites. Just because you've got 30% less weight doesn't mean it actually performs or flies better or feels nicer than a kite that is 30% heavier but made of a different material. So everything isn't the same, right? All kites aren't equivalent, all products aren't equivalent. So don't just simply look at what these brands are saying and take one statistic without thinking about the other things. That's about it for today. Hope you have a good one. See you in the next one. Peace.